has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
Open your eyes.
Take a moment to open your eyes.
Open your eyes.
The look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Open your eyes.
You are listening to Apostate Awake, the podcast. This is episode 6. I'm your host, Mr. Watchtower, and you can follow me at Apostate Awake. You can follow my guest for this episode at Take That Darwin. In this episode, we are joined by Dal, who is the operator of the Twitter account Take That Darwin. Many of you will already know and love. Once again, apologies for the late release of this episode. I guess this might be like an accidental Christmas special. It's quite heavily Trump orientated because Take That Darwin is a North Carolinian, or he at least dwells in North Carolina. So without further ado, Take That Darwin, everybody.
Sounds good.
Does that make sense? Okay, right. So just imagine like loads of applause has just gone by, and then I'll just go like straight into us doing this. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's episode 6 by now, and joining us is Take That Darwin. Just let's say hello and introduce yourself. Take That Darwin.
Delighted to be here, Mr. Watchtower.
And for the purposes of the podcast, do I call you Take That Darwin, or do you have a different name you'd like to go by?
Please, call me Dal. Take That Darwin is something that I do. Lord knows that particular albatross around my neck is not something that I want to be my identity.
Yes. Okay, so Take That Darwin is the thing that you do. Did you say Dal? D-A-L?
D-A-L, yes, short for Dallas.
D-A-L. Dallas, yes. And is Dallas your actual name, or is that like another...
My middle name, in fact.
Is it? Oh,
named after Dallas Taylor of Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Really? Oh, you know, I was always going to be called Logan after Logan's Run, but that didn't work out. But I was always a little bit upset that I didn't get called Logan, because even though my mum and dad wanted to call me that because of Logan's Run, later I had found out that like that was Wolverine's real name, and then I was like, yeah, Logan would have been a great name.
It has developed
Unless
a certain
that is not my real name.
amount of badassitude as time has gone on, yes.
Yeah, I think it used to be seen as a bit like Logan didn't seem like a cool name, but then attached to Wolverine, you know, you can't go wrong.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm talking to you roughly almost a week after the presidential elections, and I feel it would be remiss of me not to have a little bit of a chat with you about it, being that you are an American apparently from North Carolina, if I'm right. Is that right?
I do dwell in North Carolina presently, yes, and unfortunately, oh man, I was really hoping to avoid the big orange elephant in the room for as long as possible. But, yeah, this is inevitable.
Yep. So they went Republican, didn't they?
Spectacularly Republican, yes. At this point, all of branches of our legislature, they are controlled by Republicans. The president goes without saying, Republican. He's going to have the opportunity to nominate a Supreme Court justice, at least one, possibly more, and I doubt that he's going to be picking liberals for those positions. So, yeah, we are in uncharted waters here.
Yeah, it's actually sort of the fallout, after the Trumpocalypse is actually what is more interesting to me. I used to just think that he was a cartoon. I kind of still do. And the fact that it has happened has been amazing. But, there's nothing that we can do about that, as far as I'm concerned. Well, especially not as a Brit. I didn't even get a chance to vote. But it's just more what's happening. Now that I've seen the team that is apparently being put in place.
Oh, yes.
with Ben Carson and Newt Gingrich. And
Ken Blackwell, Mike Pence, of course.
Yep, Rudy Giuliani. And I guess all of Trump's family. I actually just saw a tweet before we came on, and it was like a sort of, an image showing all of those people that were going to be responsible for like the transition team, I guess. and it said, well, thank goodness Trump has got a daughter because we've actually got a little bit of diversity, and they're just the one Ivanka, and that's it, other than all the guys. And the only black guy is Ben Carson. So I think he thinks he's done there. He's got one woman and one black man, so that's enough diversity.
And Peter Thiel. So I think that is his gay representation. Mind you, this is an entire crowd of maniacs. So they're not very diverse if we're talking about level of crazy.
How was the? I think depending on which state you're from and how far into either camp they sort of pitch their tent. What is it actually like where you are now? Is it a lot of people? What's the general sort of climate where you are at the minute?
Well, I certainly had to work alongside a rabid Trump supporter all day today, so that was exciting. She and we remain on good terms, but I was not expecting her to be able to gloat at me. The fact that Trump came out the victor here surprised just about everyone in the media. Probably startled the hell out of Trump. And yes, there's certainly a lot of yard signs promoting Trump right now. I don't anticipate those going away until after the winter, because there's many conservatives who are delighted to rub this apparent victory in the faces of everyone who said it was impossible.
Yeah, I can see where they're coming from. If they thought that it was never going to happen and they got what they wanted, I can see them sort of getting behind it even more. But I can't imagine how traditionally, just like just like Obama said in his speech after Trump had become president-elect, and he was sort of saying about the transition of power being a hallmark of what the American democratic dream is all about, I guess. It seemed that it was supposed to be like building bridges and sort of getting the country on the mend. But just as I don't know how much attention you paid to British politics, but just as Brexit sort of divided the country almost perfectly in half, as did that, I'm not really sure how the Western world is going to make these reparations. Any ideas? This
is just the state of the world at the moment. You see the pendulum swing so far in one direction, and then it comes swinging right back. I suppose we can only take so many steps forward before this sort of thing is inevitable, before people get too afraid, before the paranoia takes over, because that's really what it is. On a global scale right now is lots of suspicion, lots of scapegoating, and I do not think that the same person who ran for president for the past 16 months is suddenly going to turn around and say, yes, let's reach out to one another. Let's reach across the aisle and try to build America together. No, the Republicans have got what they have craved for a long time, and they are going to be tearing down everything that has been achieved here. This is the time for face rubbing on a vast scale.
Yeah. So what do you think happens next? Because like you said, we can pick Trump apart, but he's such a cartoon character. It's so much material. There's almost no point going into it. But knowing that he is going to be president and Mike Pence as vice president, but also with the Senate, the amount of power the Republicans will have. It seems that they're already going back on the fact that they're not really going to appeal. They're not really going to appeal or repeal, should I say, Obamacare. And just today I was reading that Trump has also said that it's not really going to be a full wall across Mexican border. It's kind of like, some of it's just going to be fencing, and it seems like there's going to be a bit of a backwards pedal. But what actually happens next as far as people's rights is concerned? Because I know that the LGBT community are sort of like everyone's waiting with bated breath. Like, what do you think is going to happen next?
I am no prognosticator here. I cannot say, because Trump has been wildly inconsistent about his own stated beliefs, about his own stated goals. I think that in this case we need to look to to his handlers, to the people who are going to be passing legislation, the people who are going to be crafting policy while he's out there holding his suspiciously fascist-looking rallies. And your Mike Pence's, yes, your Ken Blackwell's, people who have, your Mitch McConnell's, these types who have made it clear that their goals are to dismantle Obamacare, and I do realize that they're walking that back a bit at this point. But I know Paul Ryan is also talking about not just targeting Obamacare, but also Medicaid, Medicare, just getting their claws into anything that has the stench of liberalism about it and ripping it apart. I cannot say at this point how much they're going to be able to achieve in the time that they have allotted, but they will do everything they can to remove Obama's legacy.
Yeah, it's times like this I wish Jon Stewart was back on the television a little more regularly. I feel like I need a good 20 minutes from Jon Stewart. He occasionally pops his head up, doesn't he, for Colbert, but...
He does, yes. Those two remain pretty close. So, and I do take some solace in Stephen Colbert's maybe somewhat neutered appearances now that he's on network TV. But yes, he is one of those sad, plaintive voices of reason in a very tumultuous period.
Yeah. Did you see Saturday Night Live with Dave Chappelle?
I have not yet seen that one. No, YouTube's recommending it to me.
Yeah. I'd encourage you to watch it, and if you're listening, watch as well. It's kind of like it manages to be moving and funny at the same time, because it kind of like begins with like a straightforward bit of stand up, but also like you can tell that Chappelle's in a little bit of shock, because I imagine he will have written his 10-minute stand up with the idea that Hillary would have won. So he's probably changed a few things, but he sort of finishes, like, part of it's funny, but he's talking about how he went to he went to the White House, and there were mostly black people at this party, and he was thinking to himself, this is he explains this more eloquently and explains a few moments in history when black people were first allowed into the White House, and he was just thinking, wow, like, this actually is progress. That's impressive. So it's kind of like it's like almost like an open letter to Trump to say, like, don't rewind time, please. It's pretty powerful.
And
so check that out.
It's a remarkable sentiment, and unfortunately now that all of the power in our government is held by these people who, by all appearances, should never be allowed to hold anything more powerful than like a TV remote. There's no stopping whatever they attempt to push through. I mean, it's not like letters to the senators are going to be able to slow down their agenda, whatever it might be at this point.
It's difficult enough, even when they didn't have quite so much power. But my problem is just it's mostly right. Like most of, I know obviously, like, I sort of I do the whole atheism thing or whatever. But it kind of just boils down to just like equality. Like, I'm all about altruism and sort of equality for all. And to watch America rewind it'll just be strange. Like, I can't imagine there being like a march of progress. If there is, that would be amazing. Like, I'm of the opinion where Trump's in now, so he will be. So like I would rather see him prove to actually be a good president. I would rather see that, but I just can't imagine it, and I can't imagine how many people want to get their claws into some of that power while everything's up in the air. It freaks me out, and I'm not even over there.
I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would not think that Trump is going to metamorphose into a beautiful butterfly once he finally ascends to the White House.
Do you not think that would be that'd be like the ultimate troll, though, wouldn't it? Because he kind of is the ultimate troll. Like, to see him in on an inauguration day, to be sworn in, and then just be like, "Psych, I'm a secret Democrat."
That would be amazing, but I do not think that there are any hidden depths here that will open flower-like upon careful probing. I do not think that there's anything going on beneath the surface with our president-elect.
Yeah, I just read an article by somebody that was like, it was an open letter to Trump, and she worked with him for around 18 years. But this was like sort of in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was when one of the Trump Towers was being erected, maybe the first one, I'm not entirely sure. But in her open letter, she basically said that back when they used to work together, he was approachable and he could take criticism. And he was the guy with his door open, ready to answer the phone if you called. And now she was basically saying, look, the more you've been on TV, the more you've lost your soul, and now I don't even recognise you, and that's why I went for Hillary Clinton. And I just thought that was like it was a bit of a damning diatribe, but at the same time saying, look, you're better than this. Get yourself away from these people that just want to get their hooks into you.
And yet he has
that's quite interesting.
He has so many voices that are telling him exactly the opposite, though. There is a genuine cult that has developed around him. This cult of personality, this group that looks up to him like some sort of savior. I mean, I've retweeted a few of these people. People who are saying that Trump ascending to the White House is proof that Christ is operating in Washington, that he is like a messianic figure here, and
there was a prominent white supremacist that he has he has like a website, blog and stuff, and he was saying that he actually called Trump what was it, God Emperor, I think he called him, so basically saying that he's risen through the ranks and he's proof of divine providence, and and then he was saying that the white race has now got has now got a dog in the fight and can actually sink its teeth in. That's worrying.
It is my hope that Trump is going to let those kinds of supporters down really badly. He's not much of a fan of keeping promises, so I can only hope that he will fail to make white supremacists happy as badly as he fails to make everyone else happy.
Yeah, let's hope so. I guess the only reason he didn't want to denounce them on his way to the White House because he wanted to get into the White House, and hopefully now he's got it in, he no longer needs to pay attention to them. But that won't stop the whole anti-abortion people and the NRA and things like that. I just feel like there's so many people with so many thumbs in so many pies, he won't know what to do with himself.
Ideally, and yet I've been burned before by hoping. I may not try that again for a little while.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the opposite of how Obama got in with the whole #hope. He's like the opposite. It's like #stop hoping.
#despair.
It's so sad, isn't it? Right, I just want to move from Trump to the second in command, Governor Mike Pence.
Rich topic.
President Pence. I'm now just going to play some audio. I played this audio in the previous one of the previous episodes. I think it was episode 4 with Theory Fail, who tends to do a similar thing like you do on Twitter.
Oh yes, love that man.
He was on episode 4, so I guess that was 2 episodes ago now. And I played him this, but I wanted to play you this audio as well. And it's worth just going through it again, because I just watched a YouTube video in which, when he was being directly asked by somebody on CNN whether or not he accepted evolution, he didn't flat out say no, because obviously he didn't want, he was trying to grab as many votes as possible at the time.
He is a politician, yes.
Yeah, he didn't exactly say what he thought, but this was him. I'm not entirely sure exactly when this was, but I'd guess it was around maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So this is Governor Mike Pence. You ready?
Have at it.
Mr. Speaker, I've always been interested in origins. Even though my training is in the law and in history, it has ever been an avocation of mine to contemplate and to study the origins of man and of life here on Earth. And many theories of origins have been propounded throughout our nation's history. 1859, a sincere biologist, returned from the Galapagos Islands and wrote a book entitled The Origins of Species, in which Charles Darwin offered a theory of the origin of species, which we've come to know as evolution. Charles Darwin never thought of evolution as anything other than a theory. He hoped that someday it would be proven by the fossil record, but did not live to see that, nor have we. 1925, in the famous Scopes monkey trial, this theory made its way through litigation into the classrooms of America, and we all have seen the consequence over the last 77 years. Evolution not taught as a sincere theory of biologists, but rather, Mr. Speaker, taught as fact. And lest anyone listening in would doubt that, we can all see in our mind's eye that grade room classroom we all grew up in with the linear depiction of evolution just above the chalkboard. There's the little monkey crawling on the grass. There's the Neanderthal with his knuckles dragging, and then there's Mel Gibson standing in all of his glory. It is what we have been taught, that man proceeded and evolved along linear lines. But now comes a new find by paleontologists in the newspapers all across America. A new study in Nature magazine. 6 to 7 million year old skull has been unearthed, the Torme skull, and it suggests that human evolution was actually, according to a new theory, human evolution that was taking place, and I'm quoting now, all across Africa and on the earth. And the earth was once truly, and I quote, a planet of the apes, on which nature was experimenting with many human-like creatures. Paleontologists are excited about this, Mr. Speaker, but no one's pointing out that the textbooks, I guess, will need to be changed, because the old theory of evolution, taught for 77 years in the classrooms of America as fact, is suddenly replaced by a new theory, or I hasten to add, I'm sure we'll be told, a new fact. Well, the truth is, it always was a theory, Mr. Speaker. And now that we've recognized evolution as a theory, I would simply and humbly ask, can we teach it as such? And can we also consider teaching other theories of the origin of species, like the theory that was believed in by every signer of the Declaration of Independence? Every signer of the Declaration of Independence believed that men and women were created and were endowed by that same Creator with certain unalienable rights. The Bible tells us that God created man in His own image, male and female, He created them. And I believe that, Mr. Speaker. I believe that God created the known universe, the earth, and everything in it, including man. And I also believe that someday scientists will come to see that only the theory of intelligent design provides even a remotely rational explanation for the known universe. But until that day comes, and I have no fear of science, I believe that the more we study the science, the more the truths of faith will become apparent. I just would humbly ask, as new theories of evolution find their ways into the newspapers and into the textbooks, let us demand that educators around America teach evolution not as fact, but as theory, and an interesting theory to boot. But let's also bring into the minds of all of our children all of the theories about the unknowable, that some bright day in the future, through science and perhaps through faith, we will find the truth of from whence we come. And I yield back.
There is a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to pause it at certain points, but I thought if somebody wanted to listen to that audio in its entirety, feel free to unpack, because I've obviously got my own thoughts. But what's your first inclination?
My first observation is that if Pence and Theory failed were in the same room together, then Pence would end up suplexed onto a coffee table. Other observations. The Taomai skull. This is something that he says like upsets all of evolutionary theory. Has entirely rewritten things. This is the sort of thing that as someone who was trained in journalism, makes me furious about the way that science journalism is presented. That every single time any new discovery is published in, actual reputable scientific journals, the popular press snatches up this really cartoonish version of it just in order to get the biggest, scariest headlines that it can, like the Talmay skull here. In actuality, it was, let's see if I'm saying this right, Sahelanthropus is what it was, discovered back in 2002. Sahelanthropus was just like a hominid that dated back to the likely time of human-chimpanzee divergence, right? This is something that evolutionary theory has predicted. This is not something that rewrites our knowledge of how humans have evolved from earlier species of apes. This is another solid evidence for evolution, and because Mike Pence, our future vice president, and the man who is currently crafting the transition team that will bring a shrieking gibbon into the White House. This guy is clearly reading popular press takes on this science and is saying, oh, well, since their headlines are shouting new find rewrites theory of human evolution, then clearly that's what's happening. That is, of course, a politically convenient thing to seize upon in order to tear down the First Amendment, which is, I want to point out here, the first of the amendments, not an unimportant one, not buried in the back somewhere. Oh my goodness, that is what prevents creationism from being taught in American public schools. We have a very important, very primary amendment in order to prevent exactly what Pence is pushing for. Oh my goodness. I'm not nearly drunk enough for this, Mr. Watchtower.
Yeah, I mean, if you rewind sort of to not necessarily to the beginning of what he was saying, but sort of to the beginning of, I guess, where he goes wrong. The first thing that I noticed was that he's talking. He's kind of using words that he doesn't actually understand. So, like, like when you're figuring out, let's say you're learning to drive or something like that, you'd learn the basics, and you wouldn't be able to be a race car driver until you'd at least learn the basics and sort of worked your way through and gathered some experience. You need the baby steps before you begin to run, and he instantly gets the word theory wrong, and then just kind of runs with it. And nothing to me could expose how little he knows about science than him, obviously, in front of people, on TV cameras, on C-SPAN, showing himself up for the ignoramus that he is. But that doesn't necessarily matter to the electorate that have voted him into power. That just baffles me. He doesn't even understand the words. And even if he probably even does, that's even worse. He probably gets it, but knows how to
twist that. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that that Theory Fail has spoken extensively on exactly that in the podcast that you showed that to him in. But and did you note the repetition of words there in order to drive the point home? It was a very well-crafted speech that Pence gave, in the sense that it was insidious. The way that he stressed the word fact identically every time. The man is he's kind of a master at taking bullshit, compressing it down into easily digested nuggets, and then force-feeding it to people.
One of the reasons I actually hope Trump is better than I imagine he's going to be is because I can't imagine a world in which he had to sidestep and allow Pence to be the president, because he's actually 10 times worse, because he knows the political game and he's more fluid, he's a better speaker, but he's probably twice as hate-filled and hate-fueled. That freaks me out.
The fact is, Trump's goal here is to be sort of like a chairman of the board. His John Kasich had apparently received a call from the Trump campaign when he was when Trump was looking for a running mate, and it was clear to Kasich that what Trump was looking for was not someone to hold down the fort for him while he crafted policies abroad. What Trump was looking for was someone to actually be the most powerful vice president of all time, while Trump presided over it and made America great again in some nebulous way.
Yeah, he wanted a CEO while he was chairman of the board. That's
right.
That's how he wants it. So I imagine he's just going to make a documentary around it as well, and they're going to have to think about what the rules are and what they cannot say on camera, because I'm sure he would love to make a show out of it and just act like he's still walking around on The Apprentice, just firing anybody that has a word of dissent.
And is it too early to move on to the subject of the pyramids were grain silos, Carson?
No, not at all. I have that written in my show notes. So Ben Carson it is. I guess we're going to keep going around in circles, but feel free to speak about Ben Carson and the position that I have read that he may fulfil, which apparently is Secretary of Education.
This is also what I have heard, Mr. Watchtower, yes.
Yes. He has doctor in front of his name, which will lead a huge percentage of Americans to think that means that he definitely knows better than they do.
Oh, absolutely, just like Dr. Kent Hovind, right?
Yeah. Hello, my name is Kent Hovind. That's how his actual... that's how his dissertation began. Hello, my name is Kent Hovind. Wow. So Ben Carson is a doctor. He's a neurosurgeon, is that right?
It is. Or former neurosurgeon. He doesn't practice anymore.
No, but... it's difficult to practice when your eyes are closed. So he's a doctor, he's a neurosurgeon, but he is an evolution-denying neurosurgeon. Who, as you just mentioned, what did he say about the Egyptian pyramids?
That Joseph, the biblical Joseph, had constructed the pyramids as grain silos. This was something that he said back in 1998, as I recall, during a speech. Has not actually recanted that.
Has he been directly asked whether or not he wants to recant?
I don't know whether he finds himself in the sorts of situations where people would be pressing him for his updated views. I don't know if he has been deflecting that sort of question lately. I doubt that he's gotten a whole lot more educated since then.
How do you... I know being a neurosurgeon doesn't mean you're a neuroscientist, but how can you be a surgeon in neuroscience and yet sort of deny general sciences? Like, how does that work? How do you compartmentalize your brain in that way? I
don't want to say anything bad about medical doctors or engineers as a whole. I mean, my sister, she is a medical doctor. I know very many very bright medical doctors and engineers, but you see so many of these people holding high degrees in those fields appearing on lists of creationists, because in order to be a medical doctor or an engineer, you do not necessarily need to have any more natural curiosity about the way the world works than to figure out how the tubes fit together. So while there are absolutely, brilliant engineers who read voraciously, while there are medical doctors who are out there learning about fields that are not directly what they're practicing, these are not requirements in order to fulfill their jobs. And as a result, you see a few people who have been assured all their lives because they have advanced degrees in medicine, in engineering, that sort of thing. They have been assured that they are smarter than everyone else, and as a result, they have decided that their opinions, encompassing just a wide range of things that they don't actually know anything about, are just as valid as their opinions about brain surgery.
Yeah, I must admit, I was duped by Ben Carson because obviously when most of the people, the 50 or so candidates to try and take the Republican primaries, when they first sort of got rolled out as you know as a UK citizen, I didn't really know. I probably knew only maybe 4 or 5 of them. So Ben Carson was like a bit of an anomaly because I thought to myself, oh, we've got a neurosurgeon, a black neurosurgeon, and he's a Republican. That's amazing. Maybe he'll be like the most democratic style of Republican. And when the whole evolution thing came up, I was like, I must admit I did associate being a neurosurgeon with, you know, a man of science. So I thought, okay, we've got ourselves a Republican. A black Republican who's a man of science. This could be the unicorn we've been waiting for.
And then he just let you down, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Which goes back to the what was the hashtag? Hashtag not hope. But what
hashtag despair.
Hashtag despair. That's what I gained. I thought he's the guy, and turns out he's not the guy. I don't mean the guy to support. I just mean, like, you know, the guy that was sort of as centre, sort of left leaning as a Republican might be, to sort of, you know, haul all of the votes underneath him. But when it came out about, you know, the pyramids and his science denial whilst being a doctor, I just don't know how people. I understand how cognitive dissonance is supposed to work, but when I see it in front of me like that, I don't know where to go with it. And this man is likely. I don't know how likely. You know, this might change after the podcast, but as we are recording, it seems quite likely that he will be the Secretary of Education.
And I expect a few more shakeups in Trump's cabinet as time goes on, because that man is not a huge fan of making decisions and sticking to them. But it does seem like Carson is likely to ride through to become a member of the cabinet valued for his intelligence, when in fact he's just another guy who has never been told, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about.
And I imagine that's something that really needs to happen in a situation room, or whatever we want to call it. I mean, I am thinking of it like in an action movie, but you know, when you want those people around the table, and it's like, you know, it's got something to do with, like, let's say climate or evolution, or like something. Whenever science came up, they would look to him and just be like, you know, is there a doctor in the room? And he's like, yeah, I'm the guy. But if he's not a specialist in that area, he does need to pipe down, which is one of the many things that worries me about Trump. He seems to think that he's great at everything. So
oh yes, and he's in a bubble. You see, he has surrounded himself with people who will do nothing but assure him that he's doing a fantastic job, because they know that he's their meal ticket. And
well, he was asked, wasn't he, about who he was going to look to with things like,
I know exactly
things like
where
foreign
you're going.
diplomacy.
Yes,
and I don't remember verbatim, but I think he more or less said, the first person I'm going to consult is myself. I know a lot about these things. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, at that time, I thought he didn't even have a chance. So I just thought, like, look at this guy just destroying every chance he may have, and it only made him stronger.
It has really gone to show what the American electorate was looking for all this time. They didn't want what anyone had previously thought was, you know, presidential material. They wanted someone who was angry, someone who put on a good show, someone who said, I validate your fears no matter how crazy they are.
Yeah, that was the overwhelming consensus from his support. That many people in polls and stuff said that, you know, we finally got somebody that actually says what we think. Like, he is actually our voice, which is worrying, because you know, you can imagine the sorts of people that are like, yeah, he's just like us. He's an old racist, sexist, white man who's a billionaire, born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And
serial sexual predator. Yes. You see, the rest of us may occasionally have thoughts like that, and we just shut our pie holes because no one should form this thought in their heads and then launch it out into the world.
There's literally no filter. That's a worrying state of affairs. And even when you're at a point where you can have a filter, I must admit, I frustrate myself when I send a tweet and I make a mistake in it because I'm thinking it as I do it, and then it really frustrates me. But at least there's that kind of like, what am I going to tweet? What kind of sentence shall I construct? And there it is for people to view. But I don't really have any pressure, like what I do is just kind of, the only pressure I feel is I don't want to be proven wrong by somebody that I'm sort of in a Twitter argument with or something. But no more so than the next guy. But if you have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of followers, he doesn't even have a filter in Twitter when he's able to just sit there and type. That's worrying.
And when you are the President of the United States of America, your half-formed toilet Twitter thoughts can actually change the world.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine he's up at 3 a.m. and he's upset about a tweet that's come his way. or somebody's just mentioned something in the news and he decides to tweet about it. Ordinarily, I would be under the assumption that doing that kind of thing would change the political optics to a point where he would either second guess, have a second thought, or he'd be physically prevented from being on social media.
And indeed, his staff has restricted his Twitter use. In the days leading up to the election, they did remove his ability to use Twitter. And
but that's horrendous in and of itself. The man is such a petulant child that he's having his social media taken away. I work in educational establishments, and one of the things that I always hear a parent say if there's been a problem with their child is, you no longer have access to social media tonight. I'm taking the electronic devices off you, and that's what happens like day in, day out, and that's what they had to do to the President-elect of the United States of America. Slap his hands and take his iPad off him and say, no Twitter for you.
State of the world.
That's worrying.
State of the world right now.
I genuinely never thought I'd see a day where I thought that I was more suited for the role of President of the United States than the President-elect. That shouldn't have even entered my head. But I was listening to the Sam Harris podcast, and he was saying that he would genuinely rather just roll the dice like Russian roulette for any US citizen rather than have Donald Trump, like because the odds are you're gonna get somebody with a genuine kind of interest in politics and kind of, be able to lead the world better than Donald Trump. That's a damning indictment, but he wasn't even joking, and I'm not I'm not really sure, but I think that might actually be a way forward. The chance of getting somebody worse than Donald Trump, I genuinely can't even imagine it.
And it is hard to imagine how someone who has, again, as you said, no filter, has repeatedly said the most horrifically sexist things that you can even imagine. He is, like, by his own admission, a serial sexual predator, and yet there's this cult that has developed around him that seems to believe that he's this Mr. Smith goes to Washington type, that he's this honest country boy who's going to go in and clean up all the corruption. And yet he's appointing his own children to his cabinet.
I'll tell you what was strange about that was when his children were being asked about the potential conflicts of interest with him being president as well as having all these businesses. It was his children that were saying, yeah, but if he becomes president, he won't be the leader of his companies. We will. So so that's it. There's no conflicts of interest there, and that was their only defence. That I don't even understand how you can say those words without somebody who's interviewing you just laughing in your face. They'd have to cut me off the air because I wouldn't be able to contain myself.
And
there's no conflict of interest.
The people who have voted him into office, they are perfectly willing to accept that this is true just because it came out of someone they've evidently somehow decided has charisma.
Wow. Charisma.
Apparently.
Is that what we're calling that?
Or charisma. That's a Terry Pratchett word right there, where you have so little charisma that people gather around just to see what you'll do next.
That's definitely more like it. I don't even know what. I was thinking of like a train, like a thread going through my brain of like where to go next, but I can't even like shift off it because the next time I think about something else to do with Donald Trump, there's so much there that I can't stop going on about it.
The big orange elephant in the room.
Honestly, I'm boring myself, and I still can't stop talking about it. I just tweeted before we started speaking, saying I've lost a few followers, and I can only assume that it's because of the Trump-related stuff that I've been banging on about. But like, I wish it was over as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wish it was over, and I apologise, but I can't help myself. Give me 4 more years of this at least.
Oh, really? I would say that it makes you feel a little bit better about Brexit, except that our countries are so intertwined that this is just, further collapse of Western democracy.
Yeah, we're entwined to the point where Nigel Farage came to support Donald Trump and met with him the other day. The guy from over here that was like the leader of the UK Independence Party, and they say he led the Brexit campaign. I guess he didn't really, but he was one of the primary voices, and he tended to stand outside in front of a bus that had lies written on the side of it, and then after the Brexit vote he pretended that he didn't really support what was written on the side of these buses, even though he was right there for us all to see. So he kind of is our Trump, so it makes sense that he would go over there and show him some support.
Did you see Trump's "just call me Mr. Brexit" tweet?
No.
Yeah. Evidently he is Brexit personified. This is something that he decided to brag about. Just throwing that out there.
Well, like it in a way that he thought he had something to do with it.
I don't think that that's what he was getting at. I think that what he's saying is that he is the American Brexit, which is, something that I can certainly get behind. But this is a point of pride for him.
Well, yeah, that kind of does make sense because I'm sure he views Brexit as he views Brexit as the UK sort of, showing all them Europeans who's boss, like, oh, we don't need to be part of your trade negotiations, we can do our own thing. That kind of makes sense because Trump's the guy who's like, yeah, we're going to tell China where to go, and we'll tell Mexicans that they can pay for this wall that we're going to build. So yeah, it makes sense that they'd be easy bedfellows, and I imagine that will be a relationship that will blossom. I can only imagine how happy Nigel Farage will be with that whole scenario, because he'll be like, ooh, President of the United States is on my speed dial. He'll just love that. He's a hateful son of a bitch.
Well, then their romance is just delightful for both of them. Although, I guess if they have to be in the same room together at any point, then that's going to be punishment enough.
It really takes me aback that I dislike Nigel Farage intensely, and yet I would have him take over Donald's job. Like, come next year, he'd definitely do the job more justice, even though I hate his guts.
He definitely has a better accent. I mean, that counts for a lot.
Yeah, good. An interesting accent and bad teeth. That's what Americans view for it. That's the English view for Americans, isn't it?
We've gotten enough British comedy over here, at least, that when Nigel Farage speaks, that would take some of the edge off the horror.
Yeah. I imagine that when who is it that plays House? What's his name again?
Oh, Hugh Laurie. I love that guy.
Hugh Laurie. Yeah.
Loved him in Blackadder. Man, great.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say because you sort of seem to be. I guess you and I are like some kind of like kindred spirit, as in like I imagine you would sort of find the same things funny as me, and I kind of already had a sixth sense that you would know that Hugh Laurie was this like blithering idiot like sort of character that we know and love like from the 80s and 90s. A lot of Americans seem to think that he was American, and they couldn't believe it when they heard him in interviews and stuff. But like to many Americans, he was House because that was the first time they were ever introduced to him. And when I saw an episode of House, I was just like, what's Hugh Laurie doing? He's going to ruin his comedic legacy. He hasn't, though.
No, and I mean, the man is a master at what he does. I understand he's doing something else right now, some other show in which he's basically playing House again because people love that. But comedy is so challenging that if an actor is capable of it, then they can do just about anything else as well.
Yeah, it takes a real degree of like emotional understanding and intellect to actually be funny, which I don't think many people get. They think that the jokes are what is funny, but it's not. It's the person doing the joke.
It's the delivery.
I never thought I'd see the day when Hugh Laurie was like a sex symbol. It just seems strange.
Hey.
You know, when you and I think of him in Blackadder, that's not a sex symbol.
In the powdered wig, yeah. Oh, yeah. Really does it for me. Do you realize we've gone several sentences now without mentioning Trump? Wasn't that nice? And now it's over.
Oh, you've gone and ruined it. I was happily nostalgic for things like Blackadder and Red Dwarf and things like that. All of those things. Allo Allo? Did you ever used to watch Allo Allo?
I have never watched Allo Allo myself. Are You Being Served? Of course, that's another classic.
Yeah. Well, I guess my American classic is Cheers. I used to love that. Yeah. That was my thing when I was younger.
It was about drinking. I can get behind that.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess shall we leave Trump entirely now that I've got nostalgic? I'm in a slightly better mood.
Oh man, we can't have good moods around here. That's going to ruin our whole hashtag despair vibe.
Well, if anybody's listening and they don't, I mean, they probably will already know this, because I will have already introduced you, obviously. But some people might not realise what it is that you do on Twitter and how you came to be in my line of sight, I guess. So your Twitter account is Take That Darwin, @TakeThatDarwin, if you want to follow. You've got a fair amount of followers now, like over 20,000, is that right?
Oh, no, Lord, no. I'm, not that anyone's counting, but I'm hanging steady at 12.5 thousand, and
right.
I can count a lot of that as due to some very good Twitter bros of mine, like Tattoos and Bones, Trevor there, a pretty prominent paleontologist. At least, I'm gonna call him a pretty prominent paleontologist because I like that. And these people who go out and mention my account to popular figures, and then the followers come in, and every single day I hurt all of those people. They send people to me, yes. And then I find and retweet people saying the dumbest imaginable things about science, and I wound people. I've come to enjoy wounding people, though, so it works out. Yeah.
Well, people kind of love you for it. It's a little masochistic, but they kind of the amount of tweets that I see that say things like I was enjoying my day, then I checked Twitter, Take That Darwin has ruined it all over again, and then everyone's just like drink, like playing creationist bingo. But that kind of brings you back to why I wanted you on the podcast, because it was what's the account, @Tattoos and Bones? Is it?
Yes, Trevor Valley. Trevor Valley. Oh man, I'm worried I'm not saying his last name correctly. He'll probably need to punch me in the face. But yes, yeah. Trevor @Tattoos and Bones. He has tattoos. Yeah. He digs up bones. He's a great dude.
He does, yeah, and he was on a recent episode of Joe Rogan's podcast. Is it called the Joe Rogan Experience?
Yes.
It's called? And he was on that, and he mentioned you. So he was like, man, you got to get Dal on the show. And so Rogan seemed into that, and my eyes just went wide, and I thought, oh no, if he gets him onto Joe Rogan, he'll become too big and famous for me. So I'll get him on quick before he gets snapped up by better podcasts.
Let me just assure you here that my ego is stroked by appearing on any podcast. All right, so don't worry about that.
Right, thanks. I can rest assured now. Talk to me about Twitter. Just explain to me anything that you've come across that's actually new. Is it tends to be like rehashed arguments, and obviously the people that you retweet, it tends to be all kinds of versions of if we came from monkeys.
Why are there so many? Yes.
But has there been any has there been anything new that's taken you back or shocked you, or like what, or should I say what's like the current trend that you're seeing at the minute?
Well, as Trevor, of course, was telling Joe Rogan, the flat Earth movement is the new hotness among crazy people. Yes. And even though that is largely handled by others now, I do not specifically go and seek out flat earthers to retweet. Because if you were unaware at this point, there's a whole swath of Take That accounts, from Take That Etymology, Take That Salk, Take That History, Take That GMOs, way on down the line, Take That Science, Theory Fail, he's an honorary Take That, He came quite early on in the process. Take That NASA, Take That Law. You know what? I could just do this for the next 15 minutes, but irrespective of that, Take That Earth is the one who he's previously started by retweeting things about climate change, then sort of segued from there into chemtrails, and is now doing the flat Earth stuff because we're all searching for that more extreme high, right? Or low, as the case may be.
Yeah. It began with like a gateway, and now you found it. The flat Earth scenario. It's something that I genuinely thought was. I thought it was a bit of a joke. I read something about the Flat Earth Society, and this is going back maybe 10 years. I read something about the Flat Earth Society, thinking that it was it would have just been set up as like an elaborate thing, like the flying spaghetti monster. So you can be a pastafarian if you wish, and I thought that was it was a similar kind of vein. And then when I started reading the website, I thought, maybe this is just like a thin veneer of like, this is what we believe, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then it kind of sprawled out into these YouTube videos. Every now and then I kind of fall down a spiral of like 2 or 3 hours worth of YouTube videos of flat earthers trying to prove that the Earth is flat, and the conspiracy theories about this whole this wall of ice, Game of Thrones style that seems to encompass the disc of the Earth. It's amazing. I think the most ridiculous flat Earth thing that I've seen is, much like the whole if we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? One of the things that I see so often that is ridiculous is flat earthers can't seem to realise that if the Earth is a globe, I guess their version of the question would be, if the Earth is a globe, have you ever seen water be able to stick to a ball? No. Boom. That means that the Earth's flat. That's amazing. They
have many arguments like that, including, this is my personal favorite flat Earth argument. And again, I just want to point out here that this is more Take That Earth's deal, so he would be able to tell you way more.
Try and get all the Take That's. That could be a podcast. You could just do Take That, one Take That a month. There's definitely more than 12 Take Thaters. And there needs to be a Take That podcast.
If I were less lazy, then we would. Indeed, Take That Etymology and a group of others did a Take That podcast, but due to conflicting schedules, because we're on different places on the Earth, and general malaise and alcohol problems, we only did like the 1 or 2. But regardless, my favorite flat Earth argument is that. Are you still with me? I can't quite. Yeah. Oh, okay, good. You were very still there for a moment. I thought maybe our connection had dropped. Anyways, my favorite flat Earth argument is that an airplane flying around a globe Earth would need to keep its nose pointed down at all times, or else it would fly out into space.
Yeah, that's even worse than the one that I was thinking of. Was I keep seeing these photographs of, it's like a long exposure photograph showing the flight path of the space shuttle as it sets off and disappears, and and then there's like a diagram next to it, and it shows the shuttle sort of. They assume that the shuttle should just go straight up because that's the fastest way to get to space. And their point is that the flight path kind of goes in an arc and disappears into the distance because you can't get outside of the snow globe-like lid that's above us, and that's why it kind of like disappears into the distance. And even I thought, like, I must admit, like, I don't really have a scientific background. I'm just curious about things. So I must admit, when I saw it barrel roll and sort of straighten out, my first thought was, well, it might barrel roll for some reason that I'm not really aware of, but I imagine it doesn't go straight up, because then when you're no longer provided by any resistance because you're in space, you've then got to figure out how to slow down and follow the Earth's orbit. So, or rather, orbit the Earth. So like, surely, if you set off at a slight angle, you can sort of get out of the, you know, like you can get out and make like an elliptical sort of style orbit and keep going around, as opposed to up and turning right, which makes absolutely no sense.
And a lot of that is. I'm sorry. Please finish the thought.
No, I was just going to say my instinct was kind of right. I didn't know the exact, you know, I didn't know exactly why, but it was almost sort of, it was just intuitive. I just thought, well, if you're trying to get around, you've got to go at an angle, because it makes no sense to go up and turn right, because you're then in space, aren't you? So like, I had a little look into it, and then I thought, oh right, yeah, that makes sense. And then when I linked that to the person, it was just block. Amazing.
Yeah, they are not big fans of opposing views, except to know that there's sort of this background radiation of opposing views so that they can feel like a persecuted minority. They need that. They cannot survive without this feeling that they are being deliberately suppressed.
So in the one that you just mentioned, they believe that a plane should have to point down in order to get around the Earth.
Yes, apparently the notion of flight ceilings is not something that's ever occurred to them.
But it's almost like the actual size of the Earth never quite occurs to them either.
Oh no!
I fully accept that it's very difficult to get into your brain. Much like people who don't understand evolution never really think about like time on a geological kind of scale, which is hard to get your head around. But you really need a geological scale in your brain to try and figure out how and why these things happen. And it's very similar, like the scale of the Earth. When they see like an image of the Earth that's been made up of composite photographs, they think that that's because NASA are doing like a Photoshop job, and sometimes NASA are doing a Photoshop job because it's very difficult to get all of the Earth in, because most things aren't that far away, and the Earth is very, very big. So even though you're sort of outside of the atmosphere, does not mean you're far enough away to take a wide-angled lens. You know, and it's not difficult to figure out if you just have a little look.
I mean, this is an audio-only podcast, so I just want your listeners to be aware that that your body language, that your hand gestures are communicating your extreme exasperation right now.
Yeah. You can see me. If only you could see me. I'll have to do like a Google Hangout at some point where I can just like I can get into it. I was a little bit like conducting an orchestra just then. There was a lot of ball movements with my hands as well.
A lot of squinting, some hand to the forehead.
Yeah. I forgot you could see me actually, because I was actually looking at the program that I'm recording this on. So like I don't have an image of you anywhere. So I forgot you could actually see me.
Well, I don't want to make you self-conscious, but not only can I see you, but you look magnificent.
Thank you. It would have been great if I forgot you could see me and I was just taking my clothes out while I was talking to you. That could happen now. It's actually it's way past midnight. It's past my bedtime now. It's 1:05 in the morning where I am, because you're in North Carolina, which is what are you now? 9 o'clock?
It's 8 o'clock. Yes.
Wow. Right. Well, I guess we should probably just wrap it up at some point. Yeah.
Well,
so that I can get to bed.
You know what? We could continue to do like a Mr. Watchtower After Dark thing, where we work a little more blue. We both have martinis, but let me just take the moment to give a shout out to all of the wonderful Twitter people who are out there. Not just the Take That crew, all of whom beautiful folks, but also the people who follow my account and are injured by me every day. Without you, this would be impossible, but because of you, this is a burden that I can bear. If I'm passing the hurt along to someone else, then I can survive, so thank you. Even if my liver kind of looks like a basketball that's been wrapped in rotting beef right now, I'm still alive.
Yeah, I think it was last weekend or the weekend before, because every time people are playing Creationist Bingo and they're shouting drink, I actually sent a picture, I tweeted a picture saying, I'm sure Take That must have said drink at some point today. And they were like, what was that concoction? Because it had a strange sort of gin explosion. I don't even know what was in that now. Blueberries and some kind of vegetation. I don't know. It tasted great though. I was in Manchester in Godless Spellchecker's neck of the woods.
Oh, nice.
So I am one of those Twitter people. So you've created more or less every single emotion in me on a daily basis. So you're one of the few guys that gets to do that.
You know what? I am honored, Mr. Watchtower.
Yeah, there's literally, imagine that, I never even thought of it like this, but there's literally not been a day since I began my account and found you, there has never been a day when I haven't seen something that you have retweeted. An intricate part of my life, and you don't even know. Well, you do know it, 'cause I'm telling you.
And I'm proud to be there, providing entertainment to you and about 12,000 other sad bastards.
Yeah, we thank you for it, but our livers don't. Any final thoughts before we bid you adieu?
Well, if this is my my last chance at giving a speech to wow and impress and so forth, I just want to say, everybody out there, keep learning, never get smug, never get content with the amount of knowledge that you have. Never surround yourself with yes men, people who will just do nothing but reassure you that you're right. Always seek out opposing views. Always check the primary sources for any claim, whether or not that information is supposed to support your views. And if you know what's good for you, don't follow my Twitter account. But I don't think that's going to chase anyone away. They know what they're in for.
Yes, great sentiment. The definition of education of an educated man is someone who knows what they don't know, or rather what they might need to know. So yeah, we mustn't get too smug.
Never.
And I hope that the people that you're sort of talking about and that we have been talking about, but we're not going to mention the names again because we'll set off again. I hope that they take that advice. Please take that advice. Right, thanks for being on Apostate Awake.
And thank you for having me.
Obviously, I will be trying to get you back on at some point.
Delighted to.
And I imagine we'll never really run out of material, because by the time I get you on next, Trump will likely not just be the elect, he will be the man. So that'll be something for us to look forward to, won't it?
I've already detected an uptick in crazy, so something to look forward to.
I imagine there's going to be a new Take That account just arriving just because of the presidency.
Take that, democracy.
Yeah. Okay, right. Well, thanks for being on episode 6, and I'll see you again.
Mr. Watchtower, you take care.
Thank you. Bye now.